What up, world? Established Rich coming right back at you. Let me tell you something. There was a time, and I'm talking about the 1980s, the early 1990s, when hip-hop was not just music. It was currency. It was treasure. It was like gold. And if you had a certain song back then, you were not just a fan, you were a gatekeeper. You held the keys to a part of the culture that everybody could not access. Back then, you could be the only person in your whole school with that one track. And I mean the only one. The only one on your bus, and sometimes the only one in your neighborhood. And when you walked around with them Walkman headphones on bopping, people knew you had something. They would see you, give you that little head nod, and sooner or later, you would feel that tap on your shoulder. Yo, let me hear that real quick. And when you handed over those headphones, that was not just sharing music. That was a transfer of power. That was a moment. You had to earn that listen. And if you were one of the people who had it, you valued it. You valued the music. You valued the moment. You valued the experience. Now, let's talk about how you even got that music. You didn't wake up, grab your phone, type in a name, and hit play. No, you hunted for it. You chased it. You waited for it. We had the top 8 at 8 countdown. We had late night radio shows, and you would be sitting right there. Cassette deck ready, fingers on record and play, just waiting for your song, waiting for your chance. And when it finally came, you prayed the DJ wouldn't talk over the intro. And you know they always did.
Yeah, it's your man DJ.
Be like, come on, man. But if you called it clean, that was like winning the lottery. And the next morning at school, you walked in different. You had that tape in your pocket and everybody knew it. And then there were the DJs. Listen, I know today everybody thinks they understand exclusive, but let me explain something to you. Back then, sometimes there was only one copy of a song in the entire town. One. And it sat in a DJ's crate. If that DJ didn't play it, you didn't hear it. Period. And when they did drop it at a block party, the whole place lost its mind. That's value. That's scarcity. That's respect for the music. Now let's talk about the cassette itself. That little plastic rectangle. That was your investment, your property, your goal. You would play a tape so much, the ribbon inside would start to stretch. The sound would get warped. And then one day it would snap. When that happened, you had two options. Grab a pencil and try to rewind it back, or go buy the album all over again. And a lot of us, we did both. We learned how to repair our music because it was no other way. Here's what people today don't get. Some of the best music back then never touched the radio. It was too raw, too explicit, too real for mainstream airplay. And that's exactly what made it ours. Your parents didn't know what you was listening to back then. Your teachers didn't know, and that was the point. It was our secret, our world. Closed to anybody who didn't earn their way in. Music back then brought us together. You could walk past a school and see a group of kids huddled around one Walkman, taking turns with the headphones, sharing one track like it was oxygen. That was community. That was connection. That was hip hop. Fast forward to today. Music is everywhere. And because it's everywhere, it's disposable. You can hear a song today, forget it tomorrow, and never think twice about it. Back then, we lived with songs for months, sometimes years, because that's all we had. Now, an album drops at midnight, and by lunch, people are already asking what's next. The pace has erased the patience. And with that, the value, the shared moments, gone. Now, the music is just there. And because it's there, people don't cherish it. So when I talk about the cassette era, I'm not just talking about nostalgia. I'm talking about value, about effort, about scarcity, about respect. Back then, music was not just background noise. It was a bond. It was an identity. So here's the challenge. Even if we can't go back, we can carry that mentality forward. Treat the music like it matters. Give it your attention. Share with intention. Let it mean something again. Because when music was valuable, so was the connection it created. What up, world? Established Rich coming right back at you. Listen, we've all seen stories in this culture where rappers have had their moments, artists who've had their run, but this right here, what we're talking about tonight, this is something different. This ain't just another rapper blew up story. This ain't he got a hit, went on tour and cashed out story. This is about a man who never stopped creating even when the walls were closing in on him. Even when the people counting him out was louder than the people cheering for him. I'm talking about NBA YoungBoy, Kentrell Garden from Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Now let me break it down for the people in the back.
He did not start with a smooth path. He did not start with a safety net. When he was just a child, he broke his neck in a wrestling accident. Not a sprain, not a crack, a break so bad he had to wear one of those halo braces that literally screw into your skull to hold your neck in place. 3 scars on his forehead to this day. And those are not just physical marks. That's the kind of injury that follows you mentally too. He was raised by his grandmother in North Baton Rouge. That was love in the home, but outside, the streets were loud, unforgiving, and dangerous. He had to grow up fast or he was not gonna make it at all. School was not his focus. By 9th grade, he dropped out. Soon after that, he was locked up in juvenile detention. That's where he started writing. Not essays, not homework, but lyrics, bars. Trying to turn frustration into something that made sense. Trying to turn fear into something that felt like power. When he got out, there was not a label waiting. There was not a big manager offering him a contract. What he had was his pen, his voice, and a circle that believed in him. His first mixtapes were not polished. They were not chart toppers, but they were raw. They were honest. And that's why they started to spread. Baton Rouge first, then Louisiana, Then the internet. People started hearing a voice that sounded older than his years. And that wasn't by choice. Life had aged him before the music industry ever did. Then came the breakout, AI YoungBoy. That's when the buzz started to spread in a real way. Atlantic Records came calling. The music got bigger and the reach got wider. But here's the thing, he never slowed down. While other artists were debating when to drop, planning perfect album rollouts, he was in the booth constantly. In 2018, he released 8 projects. 8. Most artists today release an album every couple years. He wasn't waiting for industry timing, he was on his own timing. And in 2022, he did it again. 8 projects. That's not a strategy, that's an obsession. He even admitted that himself. I got a disease for putting out too much music. I can't help myself, it's addictive. The music is therapy. But while he was feeding the fans, life was getting heavier. Legal trouble, federal weapons charges, multiple arrests. Then came house arrest in Utah. 24-hour armed guards outside. Cameras watching him constantly. Every step, every move was being watched. Most artists in that situation would disappear from the public eye. He built a studio in his house and kept going. Recorded album after album. Shot videos inside his house. Kept feeding his fan base like nothing had changed. Now let's be real. It wasn't just the legal bounce. He's talked openly about his pill addiction, about isolation, about being in dark places. And yet when he says music is therapy, you believe him because it's not some polished PR line. It's his truth. Sometimes it was the only thing that kept him steady. That's why his audience connects with him so deeply, because they can hear the fight in his music. They can hear when he's struggling and when he's focused. Here's the part that still blows my mind. Through all of that, the arrest, the confinement, the addictions, the pressure, the music didn't just keep coming, it charted. Top 10 albums stacked up. Billboard 200 entries piled up at a pace we almost never see. By 2025, he had 34 appearances on the Billboard 200, more than E40, and tied with Nas and Jay-Z for top 10 albums at 25 years old. That's not normal, that's not common, that's a generational run. Then came the shift. 2 months before Massa dropped, Donald Trump granted him a full pardon. For the first time in years, he wasn't confined. He was not being monitored 24/7. And instead of disappearing or celebrating for months, he went straight back to work. Massa, Make America Slime Again. 30 tracks. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200, selling 49,000 copies the first week. Another top 10, another milestone. But Massa was not just another album. It was the first release after his freedom. It was a statement. Here's why the youth ride with him the way they do. They watched him fall. They watched him get back up. They watched him make mistakes, face the consequences, and keep going. They're not following perfection. They're following someone who's human, who's flawed, who's growing in public. And that makes the connection stronger than any marketing plan. Now he's preparing for the road. Touring, meeting the people face to face. That's a different kind of test. Not just performing, but staying focused, staying disciplined. Night after night, city after city. If he can keep that focus, this run becomes a career. And that career becomes a legacy. When you look at everything he's been through, the childhood injuries, the losses, the legal fights, the confinement, the addiction, and then you look at the catalog, you realize one thing is simple. When he's at his best, he creates. When he's at his worst, he creates. No matter what. He keeps creating. And that's why I call this creation through the storm. Salute the NBA YoungBoy. What up, world? Established Rich coming right back at you. Ladies and gentlemen, when you talk about geniuses in music, real geniuses, the conversation always circles around the same names. Dr. Dre, Timbaland, Swizz Beatz, Quincy Jones, and yes, they're all incredible. They've all changed the game. But I'm here to tell you, there's one name that does not get spoken about with the same weight. A name that belongs right next to every single one of those, if not higher. And that name is Jermaine Dupri. I'm not talking about just a hit maker. I'm talking about a man who can walk in the studio and do it all. Write the song, produce the beat, arrange the vocals, play the instruments, engineer the session, mix it down, and do it for any artist, any age, any genre. Hip hop, he's got it. R&B, he mastered it. Pop, no problem. Slow jams, club bangers, crossover hits. He does it all. And here's the part that separates him from almost everybody else. He's been doing it since 1992 without missing a year. 30 years of relevance, 30 years of hits, 30 years of genius.
Now let me break it down for the people in the back.
Before the platinum plaques, before So Def, before the world knew his name, there was a boy in Atlanta soaking up the music business like oxygen. His father, Michael Malden, was connected in the music industry. But Jermaine was not just standing on the sidelines. He was not just the kid backstage. By the age of 10, he was dancing with Houdini. Not in the living room, not at talent shows, on stage, on tour, in front of thousands. Think about what that means. Most 10-year-olds are worried about cartoons and cereal. Jermaine was learning crowd control, learning what it takes to get people on their feet, learning the timing, the energy, the confidence it takes to move an audience. That early exposure was his first education, and that was priceless. Fast forward to 1992. Jermaine is now 19 years old, barely an adult himself, but already thinking like a mogul. He spotted two kids, Chris Smith and Chris Kelly. He don't just see them as rappers. He don't just see them as a duo. He saw them as a movement. Crisscross, the backwards jeans, the oversized clothes, the swagger. Jermaine wrote every song. He produced every beat. He shaped their look, their style, their brand. The debut album, Totally Crossed Out, didn't just hit. It exploded. 8 million copies sold worldwide. Multiple gold and platinum singles. And let me remind you, Jermaine was 19. Do you understand how crazy that is? To have an album you wrote and produced in its entirety sell 8 million copies? That's an accomplishment most producers will never come close to in their life. Now with Crisscross dominating the charts, Jermaine didn't sit still. In 1993, he founded So Def Recordings. Now here's where you see his genius as a label head. Most people would have chased a big name rapper from New York or LA. Jermaine, he signed an all-female R&B group out of Atlanta called Escape. He produced their debut album, Humming Coming At You. The album went platinum. And with that, Atlanta was not just a dot on the hip-hop map. It was a major city in the conversation. By the mid-90s, people were calling Atlanta the Motown of the South. And Jermaine Dupri, he was our Berry Gordy. Except he wasn't just running a label. He was still writing and producing the hits himself. Next move, Jermaine signs a young female MC from the west side of Chicago, Da Brat. They hit the studio, and in the summer of 1994, they dropped Funkdafied, platinum. First female rapper in history to go platinum. Produced entirely by Jermaine Dupri. At this point, Jermaine's batting average is absurd. Crisscross, platinum. Da Brat, platinum. Escape, platinum. All of this in an era when the West Coast was running the rap game. The East Coast was resurging and the South was barely on the radar. Jermaine wasn't just in the conversation, he was leading it. By the mid-90s, Jermaine Dupri was a force, not just in Atlanta, but worldwide. In 1995, he co-wrote Mariah Carey's Always Be My Baby. That was the start of the most successful artist-producer partnership in history. He took Usher, who had struggled with his debut, and executive produced My Way. That album turned Usher into a superstar. Mariah and Jermaine reunited years later for the emancipation of Mimi. Usher and Jermaine made Confessions. Those albums were not just hits, they were moments in music history. Songs like We Belong Together, Burn, defined eras. Jermaine's name is on all of them. Now, this is where Jermaine separates himself from almost everybody else. Dr. Dre, incredible, but mostly hip-hop. Timbaland, genius, but in his own lane. Swizz, energy unmatched, but with a signature style. Jermaine can do it all. He can make a pop smash for Mariah Carey in the morning, a street anthem for Biggie in the afternoon, and a smooth R&B hit for Monica in the evening. He's worked with Jay-Z, Nas, Janet Jackson, Bow Wow, Lil Jon, Ludacris, and the records worked every single time. That type of versatility is rare. That's why I say it's not a producer alive who can do what he does. Now, here's the stat that blows me away every time. Jermaine Dupri has had a hit or multiple hits on the charts every year since 1992. That's over 30 years without getting cold. No disappearing, no comeback needed. He has lived in this game, adapted with it, and shaped it. And now, in 2025, Jermaine is at it again. He's working on the Magic City soundtrack, bringing in legends like 8Ball and MJG, bringing J Money back in the mix, Sean Paul, artists who have been quiet for a minute. Jermaine is bringing them back out. It's the same thing Nas is doing for New York right now. Bridging generations, restoring pride, creating new classics with the veterans. Jermaine Dupri is doing that for the South. And I promise you, when this soundtrack drops, people are going to realize that Jermaine is in a class by himself. From dancing with Houdini at 10 to selling millions of records before he could drink to shaping the sound of hip-hop and R&B for decades. Jermaine Dupri is a genius, a visionary, and he deserves every flower we can give him. Salute to Jermaine. What up, world? Established Rich coming right back at you. Listen, this one right here, this is not about hype. It's not about beefs, awards, or chart positions. This is about life and death and a crisis that is eating through our communities from the hood to Hollywood faster than most people can even process. Fentanyl, a word a lot of people hadn't even heard of 5 or 6 years ago. Now it's everywhere. It's in the streets, it's in the suburbs, it's in the music industry, it's in places you would never expect it to be. And I'm telling you right now, this drug does not discriminate. It does not care if you're rich or broke, famous, unknown, young, or old. It's taking icons, it's taking up-and-comers, it's taking people who had no idea they were even taking it. Now here's a cold reality. Fentanyl is a synthetic opiate. 50 times stronger than heroin, 100 times stronger than morphine. It's cheap to make and easy to move, and it's showing up in everything. Pills, powders, even weed, and the person using it doesn't always know it's there. That's why these deaths get called accidental overdoses, because the victims were not trying to take fentanyl. They didn't ask for fentanyl. It was hidden in whatever they thought they were taking. And by the time it hits, it's too late. Now you want to talk about the human cost? Let's talk about some of the names. Names you know, names we all know. Prince, one of the greatest musicians to ever live. The man could play 27 instruments and could write hits in his sleep. Gone in 2016. Accidental overdose from counterfeit pain pills. Tom Petty, a rock legend, frontman for the Heartbreakers. He had just finished a huge tour. Fentanyl mixed with prescription drugs. Gone in 2017. Michael K. Williams, Omar from The Wire. A talent like that, once in a generation. Died in 2021 from heroin laced with fentanyl. Angus Cloud, star of Euphoria, just 25 years old, died in 2023. Fentanyl mixed with cocaine and meth. And in hip-hop, the losses keep coming. Gangsta Boo, Memphis legend, member of 3 6 Mafia, died January 1st, 2023. Cocaine laced with fentanyl. Enchanting, signed to Gucci Mane's 1017 label, died June 2024. Friends say she was really sick before being found unresponsive. Toxicology pointed to fentanyl. Big Scar, also signed to Gucci Mane's 1017 label, just 22 years old. Accidental overdose. Pills laced with fentanyl. And we've got others, lesser known, but no less human. Young rappers, producers, influencers, YouTubers. It's taking people before they even get a chance to see what they could have been. See, back in the day, if somebody overdosed, it was usually on the drug they were trying to take. Heroin, coke, pills. Dangerous, absolutely. But at least you knew what you were dealing with. Fentanyl changed the game because you don't always know it's there. A pill you thought was Percocet could be fentanyl. A bag you thought was coke could be fentanyl. The dealers cut it in to stretch the product and increase the profit. But there's no science to it. A couple of grains too much could be fatal. And we're talking about grains like salt. Law enforcement is playing catch up with this drug. You shut down one supply, another one pops up. The DEA is out here seizing record amounts, millions of fake pills, but it's still flooding in. There have been cases where they have tracked down the people responsible for the death of celebrities who have taken fentanyl. The guy who sold a fatal batch to Michael K. Williams, he got charged and convicted. But for every dealer they catch, it's 100 more out there. And a lot of them don't even know how lethal their product is. And let me make this clear. This is not just about celebrities. The only difference between them and the rest of the victims is we hear about them on TMZ. Every day, parents are burying their kids. Kids are burying their parents. Friends are losing friends. And here's the part that cuts deep. In most cases, they're accidental. These people were not trying to die. They were not trying to play Russian roulette with their lives. We got to talk about prevention. We got to talk about education. Because the sad truth is, a lot of people still don't know how lethal this is. You think you're taking something safe because you got it from a friend or someone you can trust. Fentanyl does not care. We need testing strips. We need real conversations. And we need to remove the stigma around saying, I ain't touching it. Sometimes the cool thing to do is just stay alive. But hey, that's just my opinion. What's yours? Like, comment, subscribe, Established R.I.C.H. I'll be back with another one. Peace.